2-minute warning. 2-minute warning.
We'll just give a 2-minute warning. 2 minutes.
Thanks, Larry.
Hi, 2-minute warning.
Anybody need longer than 2 minutes? 3 minutes? 2 minutes, good.
Professor, it's the 2-minute warning. Any details here before you go and make sure you the 2-minute warning now.
No, wait, no, one more minute. They're on the 2-minute. They're spooling up a live shot of time to it.
Yeah, we're just letting them blow up their live shots now.
Everyone ready? Anyone not ready?
Testing, mic check.
All right, we're ready.
All set? Good morning. I'm Mike Merrill, County Administrator. Thank you all for being here again. We've been hard at work watching Irma, and now she's upon us, but we're ready. And I have with me some of our strong community partners, and I'm just going to take you through some of the fundamentals here before they come up and give you the details. So it's a powerful storm, we all know that. Hurricane force winds. It just made land in the Keys. We're expecting hurricane force winds, extreme rainfall, and a storm surge that could reach as high as 8 feet. Our focus from the very beginning has been on the safety of our residents, and that's what we've been busy doing. We are prepared. We're ready. People are tired, but their spirits are good and here at the EOC, and we're ready to address this issue. So we've had more than 20,000 people take refuge so far in Hillsborough County shelters. And at this time, really, it's getting to the point where it's too late for folks to take shelter, and they just need to be as safe as they possibly can. I'd like to acknowledge the incredible workforce, the work done by those manning the shelters. It's a very challenging job, and thank our partners with the American Red Cross and the Hillsborough School District. These volunteers have provided shelter, food, and comfort to thousands of people. So according to the National Weather Service, we will begin to experience tropical storm force winds anywhere between noon and 2 p.m. today. We can expect hurricane force winds to begin at approximately 7 p.m. today. So as I mentioned, we have over 21,000 evacuees housed at 41 emergency shelters. We have 347 volunteers and staff at those shelters. Almost 800 residents transported to special needs shelters, and we've been working aggressively to spread the news, spread the contacts, spread the information to our residents, and we've had almost 3 million page views on hcfl.gov.net seeking hurricane-related information. So we have emergency responders and equipment in place. There'll be a point today where we really cannot send people on the road, and it would be unsafe to send our first responders out, so we'll be hunkered down here for a while until the worst of it passes, and then immediately be out on the road with fire rescue and sheriff and TECO to begin the assessment and the rescue process of the effort. So with that, I'm going to begin by asking Preston Cook, our emergency manager, to come up and give you some more details on the storm. And after that, we'll have Chief Jones and Sheriff Chronister Heart CEO Catherine Egan, and School Superintendent Jeff Eakins here to help fill you in on some of the details. So, Preston, it's all yours.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everybody. As we've said, this is going to be a very dangerous situation. We knew that this morning the rains would start, the conditions would rapidly start to deteriorate. We're still hearing that the strongest winds, or at least the tropical storm force winds, could start impacting our area here by midday. But it's going to get worse before then. That's why we've said make sure that you are in place by this morning, especially from the mandatory evacuation at 0800 hours this morning. You need to be at a safe location now. You need to be where you're going to stay and ride out this storm. Our shelters have been continuing to take people overnight, and even early this morning, and they're probably still continuing to because people are still just trying to get out there. What we want to tell people is you need to be at the location where you're going to stay for the duration of this before it gets the worst conditions that we can expect from this storm. Time is now. We are still looking at any opportunities for us to increase capacity, but our shelters, our special needs shelters, they're at capacity. We have an unprecedented incident here where we have a storm of this magnitude coming, and we've opened up many of our special needs shelters that we have available right now, and many of our general population shelters, pet-friendly shelters, and that's why we knew they would fill up, and that's why we told people to get there as soon as you can. As we go through the day, we want people to continue to look at the storm conditions. We know that this wind is going to come, and then as the wind passes, as the tropical storm winds pass, I don't want people to get complacent after they're going through, because after that, we're going to start seeing the storm surge come behind that. And that is still going to be one of the most dangerous components of this storm. As we said before, if you live near any of our rivers, the Alafaya, the Little Manatee, areas that you know that flood during situations, we're expecting upwards of at least 12 inches of rain and possibly more. So if you live in any of these areas, we're looking at the flood predictions right here for the Little Manatee and the Alafaya. We have a rapid increase possibility in this water near these rivers because of the rain that we're expecting. If you live near here, you need to be getting to high ground to make sure that you won't be in these flooded areas. It's very important. We have surge zones and we have flood areas, okay? Flooding areas, two different things, but you still need to be in areas where you're going to be safe. So right now, we are still continuing to operate here and continue to adjust as necessary as we get into the last few hours before we see the worst conditions. But as Mike said, at some point we have to cut off the responses. The chief will talk about that, the sheriff will talk about that, because it is going to be too dangerous for us. We want our citizens to do the same thing. We're thinking that by noon, people shouldn't be on our streets. They should not be moving around. The winds are going to be possibly too dangerous for any of us at that point. But right now, everybody should be where they're supposed to be, and they're going to be where they're going to ride out this storm.
Chief Jones, Hillsborough County Fire Rescue. We have been preparing since Friday for this. Our staff has been on duty 24/7. Behind the wall, the EOC, the operating center, is full of people who have been working constantly since Saturday morning. We have done everything we can to prepare the response to the hurricane. We know that it's going to be a very serious storm, and we are prepared to take action once the storm has passed. From the fire rescue standpoint, as of 8 o'clock this morning, all personnel from all three shifts are on duty in the stations throughout the community. We have increased the staffing on our engines and our rescues. We have put special rescue squads together. We have swift water teams throughout the county. When Preston was talking about the river flooding, if you're in those areas, you know that you're in a flood area. You need to be out of that area. We will have boats, but we may not be able to get to your home. But we have increased our boat capacity so that once the storm has passed, we can go out and do the best possible rescue missions that we're capable of. There is going to be a time when the sustained winds are at 40 miles an hour to 50 miles an hour. We have wind meters at every station. The officers will be checking the wind meter in their location, the wind speed in their location. And from 40 to 50, we'll make a discretionary call. At 50 miles an hour, sustained winds, we will not be responding. It's too dangerous to the apparatus and the personnel on the apparatus. As soon as the wind calms back down, we're going to be out on the streets doing everything that we can to protect the citizens. I mentioned before that we have stations that are in the evacuation area, and we evacuated them as of last evening. We are out of the level A evacuation areas now. We've repurposed those engines in other areas throughout the county. We have done everything that we could think of to be prepared for the storm once it has passed by, and we will get to your calls as quickly as we can with the absolute best resources that we can put forward. Thank you.
Good morning. At this time, your sheriff's office is still offering our full spectrum of services, but we know that that window is rapidly closing. With the storm strengthening and heading this way, we will have to eventually suspend our services. In short time, we'll continue to work with the Emergency Operations Center here, and as we move forward, prioritize our calls for service. There is still time to evacuate, but that window as well is closing. So if you have that special need, if you have that medical condition, if you live in those areas that are known to flooding, it won't be any different. Please find a safe place and shelter. Our midnight deputies have been kept over. We have them back sleeping on sleeping bags in different districts and areas, trying to get them some rest. Like I said, at some point, we will have to suspend our calls for service. It will just be too dangerous. And I know that that doesn't make our deputies, doesn't make our first responders happy, because they want to go. They want to help. But they're busy now answering calls for service. They're busy now helping those who want to evacuate, that last minute evacuation, and getting them out. But please be prepared. If you're going to shelter, shelter in knowing that you may be without water, you may be without power. But once the storm passes, we have assets strategically placed from Raymond James Stadium all the way to Lakeland, and we will implement that as quickly and safely as possible to help that electric company get in, to help restore power, rescue anyone that needs to be rescued. Remember, we are all in this together. Be safe.
Good morning. From a transportation perspective, Heart and Sunshine Line ran through nearly midnight last night. We transported as many people as we could. Again, as shelters filled up, Heart and Sunshine Line diverted to other locations. If Heart took you to a shelter yesterday, we will be back for you. Might be late tomorrow, it might be Tuesday. As soon as we can ascertain our facility is safe for operation and the roads are clear, we will come get you. We will take you home. After the storm, bear with us on regular service. We will be as safe as possible with our staff able to return as safely as possible. If you are trying to get out right now, my advice, stay where you are. It's been good enough through now. We cannot safely get you somewhere before it is too dangerous to get off the road. So stay where you are, make your safe preparations. And Finn and Bash and Chris, I love you boys, and I'll see you after the storm.
As a school district, we're just proud to be one of the partners aiding our families and across this community. I want to give a little bit of information related to schools. As you all know, I've announced that we will be closing schools through Tuesday, and there will obviously be a decision to make after that, and we will keep everyone abreast. We're continually assessing the situation. Of course, the reason schools may stay closed, there may be major damage to some of our schools. It may not be safe to transport students after the storm initially, and they're still going to be used perhaps as shelters. We want to make sure that we are open to aid the families across this community. Also, being the largest employer in Hillsborough County, many of our employees may have damage, and we'll need to make sure they're able to recover as well. Of course, reasons to open school rapidly would be it's a safe place for our kids. It's a place where they can get regular meals. And it's also a sign to this community that we'll be returning to normalcy, and we need to show that sign as quickly as possible. Remember, if you evacuate and you can't get back to school when it starts, we'll be looking at excused absences for those particular students because we know that families are challenged at this particular time. Speaking of challenges, I just want to pause for a moment and talk to families about how your kids are coping with this. I know you're feeling anxiety, so are they. Pass along some advice from our amazing school psychologists on how to talk to your kids. First of all, for your older kids, talk to them about the science of the storm, the track, the wind speed, and so forth. For the younger students, talk about what's going to happen, what they will experience. Talk about possible outcomes. We may not have electricity for a long time, etc. But talk about the steps and reassure them what you've done to to ensure their safety. That's what they need to know right now. And after the storm, you watch for changes in your children. Younger children, there may be some regression in behavior, some signs of anxiety. Be alert to that. Elementary age students, there could be some aggressiveness, some sleep changes that you want to monitor. For adolescents, there could be changes in eating and sleeping or changes in the relationships. Just be aware of that as well. If you see signs like this, work with an expert and take action, but I can guarantee you we will have some amazing student services staff available at every school when our students return after the storm is over to help you and your family. Speaking of our amazing staff, we have more than 40 of our schools right now currently serving as shelters. We have 1,200 staff members working or on standby. We have student nutrition services ready to feed 34,000 meals per day. That's happening right now here in Hillsborough County. I just want to give a huge shout out to our employees. You're working through fatigue. You have your own families to worry about, but you continue to serve our community. I'm absolutely humbled by your dedication. I'm so proud to be part of our team. Thank you.
Thank you all. I appreciate you being here. So as you've heard, the storm is upon us, and so we've really begun to shift our focus to what happens after the storm, immediately and in long term. So we're thinking about, of course, rescue, immediate needs that folks have, but also the recovery mode. And we've had a representative from FEMA here for the last couple of weeks, and he will be here for the duration. Both our federal partners and our state partners have been very committed, very helpful, and you know, it's clear evidence by FEMA having someone on site here to help us get through this. Once we're through the worst, you know, I have instructed all of my employees to be available to assist. They all have assignments, what we call know your role, so they will be there to help pick up some of the slack. And with that, at this point, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to take them.
So you talked about the recovery and the teams in place here in Hillsborough County. Are you expecting help from elsewhere, other states, etc.?
We have already had folks come in from around the country, Tennessee, Ohio, Illinois. Yeah, it's been a very good response. And they're in the building here somewhere.
Utility companies are coming in, Mike, as well?
Yeah, Gordon Gillette was here yesterday and talked about the great response he's gotten from other utilities around the country, even beyond what his expectations were. So I believe TECO is well positioned as well.
Is that a main concern at this point, the loss of electricity? It appears that's the case right now in South Florida, hundreds of thousands of outages reported. So is there a prediction at this point what will happen here and what assets are in place to perhaps mitigate that in any way?
There's no prediction at this point, but I can tell you that they, as Gordon said yesterday, have a plan in place to do rolling blackouts so they can manage the system load in a way that should they need to shut down substations that get flooded, that will be their main focus. So just to dispel the rumor that somehow got started, you know, TECO's not going to shut down the grid. You know, what they're focusing on is pinpointing issues that come up, be prepared to deal with them in isolated cases so that it doesn't get out of hand. And I think they've done an excellent job of positioning themselves.
You mentioned running out of time as far as people getting safely to these emergency shelters.
Right.
Last we heard there were about 16 or 17 shelters still available. Has that number changed?
Well, there's 17 shelters available, but the space is rapidly running out. And you know, we've had some special needs clients that we couldn't house anymore in special needs shelters, and so we've had to move them into the general population shelters, but that's better than the alternative. So, I mean, there really is not any time left. I mean, as was said, people just need to be safe now, figure out how to be safe because, as I mentioned, noon, we're expecting tropical force winds, 2 o'clock, and our shelters filled up rapidly. And so I think at this point, folks just need to find a place to be safe.
And we've seen inside these shelters, I mean, they're
Mhm.
safe, but they're still scared.
Oh, sure.
Any advice for people who are kind of panicked right now, even though they are in a safe place,
Sure.
to get through this?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, the best advice is to just take comfort in each other, because that's the greatest source of strength.
Is there any plan at this point of either county or the city of Tampa to enact a curfew today or tomorrow?
No,
No?
no, I have that power, but at this point, we're not talking about curfews.
What would that take to enact that?
In terms of logistics?
Circumstances?
Circumstances, right. And we'll be relying on the sheriff's office and on fire rescue, because they're gonna be the ones out, you know, most immediately. So they'll have eyes on, they'll be able to tell us if there's any kind of problems with looting or other issues that we need to address. But for right now, that's not our main focus.
Given how powerful this storm is believed to be, are the shelters any safer than a sturdy house would be?
Yes, they are.
How so?
Preston, I'll let you deal with that.
Sure. In the state of Florida, there's a considerable plan in place that requires all of our school districts to make sure that the reinforcement of new school facilities it takes place, especially outside of surge zones, so that they will be available to house citizens throughout the entire state. And that's why we use our schools as primary impact shelters. You know, people say, can we use churches and other facilities as shelters? For us, by law, we use schools because they have been hardened to a code. The American Red Cross uses code 4496, which they go out and inspect these facilities to make sure that they meet at a certain level. That's why the American Red Cross is our partner as well in terms of managing these shelters, along with the school district who manages these shelters as well. So it is more hardened than structures that have been built before the enhanced codes that are in place for construction today. Say, and I don't know the exact years, it's changed, of course, over the years, but if you think back to pre-92, Hurricane Andrew times, the codes have changed since that time, and so many of our structures are stronger, yes, but our schools are definitely built to a higher capacity so that they can be used as impact shelters to let people come in to get out of these dangerous winds to be able to ride out the storm, and that's what we're talking about. Even as we look at shelters coming to capacity for special needs, as was mentioned by Mike Merrill, people being able to go to one of these shelters that we have available still to get out of the wind is better than being in a structure that is substandard and is not going to withstand these winds, especially if they're out of the surge zone. But first, we evacuate for surge, and then we run from wind. We hide from wind. That means we go to a structure that can withstand the winds.
Any other questions? And just to follow up to that, we took early action to contact a number of our corporate partners in the community that would have warehouse facilities or conference facilities that they might be willing to make available. So those would not be facilities that are hardened in the same way that schools are, but they could be available after the event because there'll be a lot of need then as well. So that should help relieve some of the pressure on our shelters. Anybody else? No? Thank you all for being here, and our community has come together in an unprecedented way, and we have a lot to be proud of. Thank you.